Before we get started in this video, guys, on the website there, we have the hats available. I got a whole bunch of these hats over here, so you can order the hats. I'm going to have a sale on the anchor rings and the camera mounts on the website, apod.company.site. And so I'll put the link in the video here. You'll see it if you watch the video all the way through. You'll see somewhere there's a discount code posted in the video, and if you use that on the site, you're going to get 20% off your order. So again, thanks for supporting the channel, guys. Check out the links down at the bottom of the video too. There's some merch you can get from Teespring. I've got t-shirts, stickers, all sorts of stuff over there. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and here we go. Let's jump right into the video. What's going on, Predators? It's Travis here with Apex Predator Outdoors. Today we're finally going to do the jerky video. We're going to talk about making your own jerky, hopefully from some meat that you harvested yourself. I know I'm trying to get you guys out there and get you hunting, get you with a bow and arrow in your hand or a rifle, and go out and explore the great outdoors, harvest your meat yourself, and really take part in that process. But if you're not really at that point yet, completely understand. I think you'll get there eventually. So today we're going to talk about making jerky. And so on the carnivore diet, it's really important to be able to find good quality snacks that you can take with you while you're on the road, while you're on the run. And so making your jerky is a really great way to do that. And it's really easy to do at home with things you might already have. For this video, I'm going to be using a meat dehydrator, specifically for making jerky and dehydrated foods and things. But you can also use an oven as long as the temperature can get low enough. I know my oven personally only gets to about 170 degrees, so it may not be low enough. If you go down to about 150 is a pretty good temperature to be able to dehydrate something nice and slow. If you go up above that much further, it's just going to cook it, and it's not quite what we want to do. A long time ago, people used to make what was called biltong, and this is where they would actually, especially in dry climates, really like in Africa and things like this, is where this kind of originated, I believe. Again, I'm not a biltong historian or anything, but what they would do is they would take the meat that they would, from a kill or whatever that they did whenever they were hunting, and they would hang it in trees to dry where the animals couldn't get to it. So they would climb up in the trees, hang it from the branches, and what they would do is that hot, dry air would naturally just dehydrate it over time. Then they would take it, and that biltong is basically what it was. Now we know is beef jerky. A lot of people these days are using the biltong as kind of a marketing term, right? Because it seems like it's this big different thing, but really, honestly, it's just beef jerky. So whether you want to call it biltong or you want to call it beef jerky, there might be a slight difference in seasonings, but like I say, it's basically essentially the same things you can make out of here. We're going to be doing two main different types today. We're going to be doing a sausage, a dehydrated sausage that is an elk and pork sausage, and oh my god, it's so good. And then we're also going to be doing a dehydrated beef jerky that is made from a beef roast. Okay, so without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get on into it. So the first thing you want to do whenever you're going to cut up the meat first is you want to make sure you freeze it, but not completely solid. You want to freeze it just a little bit so that the whole thing is much more firm, because when the meat is sliding around, then it's going to be a little harder to cut it. But if it's a little bit firm, it makes nice, clean cuts all the way through. You don't have to do this step, but I think it's really integral. I accidentally kept forgetting about my meat, and I kept freezing it solid. Then I have to let it thaw, then I freeze it again and let it thaw. So finally I got it to the right thing. And the first thing you want to do is, whenever you start to go to cut, is to make sure that you're using very sharp knives. So these knives that I have really good ones. One of my, I'm not sure what the brand is, but my wife and kids bought it for me for Father's Day last year, and it's really great knife. I really love it. Another knife that I use that I really love is the Victorinox knife here that I've got. You can get these on Amazon. You can get them with a wood handle, with a polycarbonate handle. I just went with the polycarbonate handle. Again, this was another gift from my lovely wife. If you're going to be cutting a fresher meat, though, I would recommend using a thinner knife that slices really well, and that's what I use the Victorinox for. So once your knives are all sharpened, you're just basically going to chop it up into different slices. As I go through and I'm cutting it, I'm going to kind of trim, and I'm going to kind of clean up the slices here to make sure they make nice little neat spots. So when you're talking about the fat of the meat, there's two ways to do this. One is to make sure that you get a really fatty meat, and then you kind of have to eat this jerky within a few days, because that even if it's rendered slightly by the process of the dehydrating, some of that fat will spoil after, you know, a few days to a week, and it won't taste as good. So what I recommend is to cut as much of the fat off if you're going to be eating this over a good period of time. But like me, if you eat it with just a few days, you can go ahead and leave the fat on there, and it'll mostly render the fat through this dehydration process. So as the meat dehydrates, it's going to pull that fat out. That warm air is going to kind of like, you know, put like a glaze almost on the meat of that rendered fat. So it's going to be delicious. So next is the seasoning and the marinating of the meat. You want to kind of marinate it a little bit. And I think this is going to kind of break it down just a little bit, break those bonds down in the fibers so that it makes it a little bit more tender. You don't have to do this. Usually I use a red wine vinegar for this, but I didn't have any right now. So another thing you can use instead is like a balsamic vinegar. This works really well and it puts a lot of really good flavor in it. Especially these days, they've got a lot of really good flavored balsamic vinegars that are infused with all sorts of different things. You can try that.
All right, so just for you guys, I'm gonna try something new here. This is something I've never done before. So I usually will do like a Worcestershire sauce, which is basically almost like it's like a sardine oil-based sauce. I don't know if you ever had it or not, but it's good stuff. But again, find one without soybean oil in it. But this time I'm gonna do things a little bit different. I'm actually gonna soak it in there. And this is something I've done before where I put some vinegar in there. And what it's gonna do is gonna help to break down the tissues, and it's gonna make your jerky a little bit more tender. Give it a little bit of a zing to make it have a good flavor. Unfortunately, the only vinegar I have is malt vinegar, so I'm just gonna run with it this time. But after I do that, I'm gonna let it marinate in this vinegar, and it's gonna kind of help break down and soften that.
Basically what this is gonna do is I'm gonna put it inside of a glass, like Pyrex kind of dish. And this is gonna do is just going to allow me to kind of, again, soften up the meats and break it down. Because, you know, whenever I remove all the moisture out of the meat, what's gonna happen is it's gonna make it very tough. Right, and so then whenever the meat's tougher, it's harder to really get in there. It's harder, a little bit harder in your teeth. Get stuck in your teeth a little bit easier as well, which is, you know, fine. Get a toothpick. If you're on the road though, or something like me, like I'm driving a long period of time, I don't have a toothpick available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tenderize that meat a lot first, and so after that, I'm going to season it and dehydrate it. All right, guys. So now basically what we're going to do is we're in the seasoning round here. The jerky. See, I've got everything laid out over here. If it's paying up there, there you go. Got all the meat and everything pulled out of there. It's kind of, you see some of it got a little bit more brown parts, or just where it was soaking in the vinegar a little bit more, so it's gonna be super tender. And then basically I've got some different seasonings here. Being a little more strict on the diet, I don't do a whole lot of seasonings on the jerky like I used to. I used to put like turmeric and paprika. I love smoked paprika. It tastes really great. You can still use that stuff if you want to. If you're trying to avoid all plant materials and things like that, then you can just do something as simple as salt on it. Today I am going to be using a couple different ones, so I can try the different recipes and see which one I like better. So today we're going to use the first one I'm going to use is the Hardcore Carnivore. This is the Texas jalapeno salt, and so I'm going to put that on. What I basically do is I just set this over my sink here, and I just kind of give everything a nice liberal dusting. The only time it's good to be liberal. So there we go. Nice liberal dusting of it there, so I can see it's all sitting on top of the meat, and that's going to give it a little kick and a lot of flavor. So there's the first one. Once I'm done with that, I just take it over here. Go ahead and plug in my dehydrator. Set it on top. Make sure I tuck in the little pieces there. There we go. I'm going to set it to 145. I don't like it to be too hot because I don't want it to cook too fast because it makes the meat a little bit tougher. If you do it low and slow, it's going to end up more like a Biltong type jerky where you're just blowing warm air over it over a period of time, and I think it ends up making it a little softer. If you do it at a higher temperature, I think it makes the jerky contract more and makes it a little tougher, which isn't bad. I mean, if you like the, you know, ripping into your jerky and things like that, that can work out great. So let's go ahead and do the next seasoning over here. This one, let's see, I'm going to do
this one too. This is the Kinder's Buttery Steakhouse. I'm looking at the ingredients. I hadn't checked these in a while. Only thing questionable in this one I would say is the thing that says butter flavors. I don't know if that's real butter or not. I would highly doubt it. But anyways, so I'll take this. I'm gonna get the next tray over here. I'm gonna give it a nice liberal dusting. After I knock it loose. Okay. And it's humid here, so all of our seasonings kind of cake up after a little while. It's all right. Because anything that's dry will definitely absorb moisture down here. Back on the dehydrator. Again, if you were using just an oven, you could do that as well. You could use the same thing. What I do is I would put it on like a parchment paper, put it in the oven, something where it can, because if the fats and everything kind of come out of the meat and they just sit in the pan, then it's not going to dehydrate properly. So I'd either put it on a rack, like a cookie cooling rack or something like that, put it on top of there so it can drip and be caught in the pan, or put it on some like parchment paper or anything so you can bring it, you can soak it up on that parchment paper, and you can change the parchment paper out if you need. So this one is this is a really good seasoning I like. I've used it in the past. Double check. I haven't used any of these in quite a while. So this is a Cuisinart bourbon molasses seasoning. I like to do this on pork and chicken. Let's look at the ingredients. Dehydrated brown sugar. Might want to stay away from that. But again, if I'm feeling randy and I've had a really, really low carb day or something like that, I have no problem with a little bit of that. Molasses, salt, spices. So it's got mustard, black pepper. Again, this has got a ton of different seasonings in it. A ton of different, herbs and things like that. So if you're against all that stuff, again, stick with salt. But I'm gonna go and try it out because I like to share my jerky here too. Not all for me. All right, there we go. Nice liberal dusting of it. Again, this is a bourbon molasses going on the third shelf here. The great thing about the carnivore diet too is you can kind of cater it to your needs. If you really want to be super strict and almost kind of on a lion diet, you can do that. But if you're like me and you don't have any issues with seasonings, you can kind of choose to season things up if you want. Carson, what should we do on the last one? Let's do salt.
Salt, yes.
There we go. So we got some just coarse ground Himalayan pink salt. Ingredients: salt. All right. Yeah, fancy, bougie. So I'm gonna give it a nice. I love salt on this diet. I love eating tons and tons of salt. So
You have to do it.
yeah, I know.
That.
Oh yeah. There you go. It's my Carnivore Bay. Meat Bay. That's not gonna sound kind of sus. All right. Take that. Shake off the excess. And on with the dehydrating. If I can get it on there right. There we go. Last thing to do, just grab the lid. This is vent holes on top. And there we go. So if I were doing this on, the good thing about the dehydrator is I can just set it and forget it. I can come by, and what I like to do is I like to put some of the thinner strips on top, and those would be kind of like my test pieces. So I like on the top tray, I like to have a mix of thinner and thinner pieces. That way I can come by at random periods of time and kind of stretch the jerky and see how well it's drying out. And if it's drying out really good, I'll take a little test piece off the top there just to make sure everything's going good. Being that I have different seasonings on each rack, they're going to probably dry a little bit variably. So like the ones with more seasoning on it, like that bourbon molasses one, is probably going to dry out a little bit quicker. But overall, the top rack will be kind of my test rack. So this is probably going to be the last one to dry out. And so that's why I like to take little test pieces off of there. So. All right, guys, so I had to move this out to the garage because my wife wasn't a huge fan of the dehydrating meat in the house smell. But I just wanted to show you, this right here is a nice, really well dehydrated piece. You see that glistening there? That's all the extra fat on there that's rendered off really nicely. And so again, this piece right here is really good to eat first because it's got all the fat and everything on it. The leaner pieces though, this is also a pretty good fatty piece. So this is a little bit better representation of a leaner piece. You have it's more dry looking. But there anyways, it's on the bottom, it's kind of fat. But so these you could store a little bit longer, the drier pieces without the fat on them. You can store these a little bit longer just because they will not spoil. The fat on them will not spoil. So
Anyways, drier pieces, eat later. The nice fatty pieces, make sure you eat within a few days, or else that fat will start turning rancid and it'll taste bad. Okay, but with a few days, it's really good, and it tastes really good. The fat is nice and sweet and rendered. It's good stuff. So after several days of dehydrating, I think it took about 3 days for everything to fully dehydrate. It's going to do it at different intervals, and so the thick parts are going to dehydrate a lot slower than the thinner parts. So a lot of times what I like to do is I put the thicker cuts of jerky on the bottom tray of the dehydrator, or if you're using an oven or something like that, or smoker even, you can put those, like I say, the thicker cuts a little bit closer to the heat source, and then the thinner ones up at the top. That way they'll kind of get done a little bit closer to the same time. When dehydrating the sausage, what I did is I basically just took the sausage just as it came, and I went ahead and cut it into slices, and I just threw it on the trays. I didn't really do anything serious to it, didn't soak it, didn't marinate it. I just salted it a little bit once I put it on there, and that was it. And because it's already pre-seasoned, the sausage meat is typically always pre-seasoned. So, all right, so next here is the dehydrated sausage. You can see there, so you can tell it's done because they're like nice little chips there. So if I squeeze it, it does not compress, and I'm gonna eat it. Got a little bit of a crunch to it, but really good flavor. There you go, man. Dehydrated sausage. Of all these things, everything tasted really good. All the different flavors were really, really good and really delicious. My favorite, though, is always, I don't know why, it's always the sausage. And I think part of this is just a memory of mine. So whenever I was younger, whenever I was a kid, my granddad was big on dehydrating jerky. And he made a dehydrating jerky box that he used. But also he used to make sausage jerky all the time. I remember sometimes he would actually, on a piece of brown paper, he would carry this dehydrated sausage with him, and he would cut us off pieces, and we would snack on it as we were going around. It's just a great memory that I have. And so there's something tied to that. But this elk and pork jerky, it is just fantastic. So I recommend that you try this out. I recommend that you go and experiment with things and different things, and try different types of jerky. One thing I should have tried was I had a little bit of kangaroo and pork jerky. I know it sounds crazy, kangaroo jerky, but I'm going to do a little video eventually here about some exotic meats. But anyways, the kangaroo jerky, I wish I would have tried some of it, because taste the kangaroo jerky, it's a little tough. I mean, if you've ever seen a kangaroo, they're pretty muscular animals, so it was a little bit tough. Cutting it with the pork helped a little bit, add a little bit more fat to it. But overall, it had a decent flavor. But I would have liked to try some dehydrated pork and kangaroo jerky. I think that'd be interesting. So, but anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Go ahead and go to try this on here. Share your recipes down below. One of my favorite aspects of these videos is the community content, the community things that y'all come back and tell me, like, hey, I love this, I like this works good for me. I love hearing those things. So make sure you comment below and tell me how you do this, what you would have done differently, what you've done in the past. And if you try your own recipes, come back here and comment below what you tried and what worked and what did not work, because that's always good to know too, is what did not work very well. So thanks for watching, guys, and as always, keep defying the odds.